What's going on, folks, and welcome back to the show. As you could tell, back in the OG setup, doing a solo episode today. But it's been 2 months since I left my corporate job at KPMG, and yeah, 2 full months of being a full-time podcaster, entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it. But there's this weird cliche that I've been thinking about, that a lot of people tell you to trust the process, right? But no one tells you that the process is actually going to be you at 3 a.m. lying in bed wondering if you've just ruined your life or not. And it's been 2 months already, as I said, since I've gone all in on building this podcast. And I just thought it'd be fair to let you all know how the 2 months have gone. In the last 2 months, I've spent more time with my camera than with other human beings. And my screen time is disgusting. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. And, I've had at least 3 existential crises in the shower, in the bedroom, everywhere. But I've also had doors open that I never thought would have opened if I stayed where I was 2 months ago. So today, I literally just want to share 10 honest lessons I've learned from the last 2 months, from being a one-man business to the UAE trip and to what's coming next as well. So let's just get right into it. So the first thing that I learned in the last 2 months is I call it the jack of all trades tax that you have to pay. So what do I mean by this? When you start a business, right, you don't run the business. You are the business. I've realized that, I'm the CEO, the editor, the social media guy, so the manager, the sales team, the sound engineering team, and also the intern who makes coffee. And shout out BLX's Mocha Pod, because it's been a lifesaver. Truly, truly has been. And sometimes you're the guy who just, stares at the wall and legit just wonder what day it is. The amount of times I lost track of what day and time and date it was, obscene. But I call this the jack of all trades tax. That's what it is. It's the price you pay at the start in confusion, context switching, and doing everything badly before you actually start doing anything well enough. So, Alex Hormozy, I heard him once in a YouTube video say that when you start, you are the CEO, the intern, the accountant, the creative director, and also the cleaner. So you don't run the business, you are the business. And he's also said that mastery comes later. And right now you do learn by doing everything badly first. And that got me thinking, I'm like, surely there's other people who've, mirrored or echoed a similar message. And Theodore Roosevelt actually also said that do what you can with what you have where you are. And if you're in that phase where you're underqualified for every task you're doing, congrats, mate, because you're not failing. You're just paying the jack of all trades tax. Hope that makes sense. The second lesson that I learned, and this was with my episode with Angus Maxfield, which is that purity and authenticity is much greater than strategy. And during the podcast, Angus and I highly recommend checking out that podcast because it was such an authentic podcast in itself. But one thing that Angus told me really stuck with me. And he said that, Sachin, you're only going to be 26 once. And you're only going to be in this position that you are today, us having this chat, only once. Because next year, for all you know, next year, this time, things might be completely different. And that you don't get a replay button on this season of your life. So make the most of it. And that's made me obsessed with being pure and authentic with the show, because when I saw his company, Jumeirah John's Running Club, I actually attended an event. Given how pure and authentic it was, really opened my eyes to this idea. He was getting sponsors from New Balance, Oakley, etc., even though they make no money, because it's just a run club. So when you think of authentic, don't think of it as a marketing word, okay? I mean, if you turn the camera off, am I the same person? So authenticity isn't a strategy, it's leverage. No one can copy someone who is just being themselves. And Ralph Waldo Emerson, I've probably quoted him so many times. He says that to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And Naval Ravikant, his line sits perfectly here. He says that your only job is to be the most you version of you. So right now, my business model, and I'll lay it out to you right now. It's be so Sachin that copying me becomes impossible. That's the plan. That's the mode. Simple as that. And I realized like my camera is shaking. It is an iPhone, being fully transparent, but I'm working towards getting a proper camera as well one day. So we keep going. Lesson number 3, okay? The anxiety of uncertainty. Oh my God, this is such a wild, weird facade, okay? That comes and bites you in your ass at some point. I'm sure a lot of people have said to you, because they've said to me that it's all going to work out, bro. Just trust the process. Okay, cool. But how? With what money? And on which timeline? Because my landlord isn't going to accept trust the process as my rent, right? And I've realized that there's a massive gap between saying I'm okay with uncertainty and actually living it every single day. And courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving while your hand's actually shaking. That's what real courage is. And Reid Hoffman has a quote which says, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. And, you know, Soren Kierkegaard, I'm probably butchering his name, but he has this beautiful, painful line where he says essentially that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Think about that. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. So I've started calling this phase the delusional season. It's the period where your results haven't caught up to your belief yet, and you have to wake up every day and act like they already have. So if you're in your delusional season right now, I see you, mate. I really do. And living through it, oh boy, is it drama, but it's good fun though. Moving on to lesson number 4. I actually moved in with my family, right, when I was in the UAE, and it taught me something absolutely sensational, that moving in back with your family is actually an emotional boot camp. Why? Because coming, from an Indian background, this one hits a lot deeper to the Indian community, because a lot of Indians, Pakistanis, like South Asian folks, move abroad. You leave home to build your dream life, etc. And you get used to being so independent, living alone, that you start making your own rules. And then when you move back in with your family, suddenly, you get asked questions like, where are you going? What are you doing? Why are you sleeping in so late? And what do you even do all day with your business or, the podcast in my case? And I realized that home is not just a place. It's actually a mirror. It reflects the old version back to you, the one who existed before this growth and risk phase of your life. And, I was looking into some quotes that I could ref off, and Thomas Wolfe actually once said that you cannot go home again because home has ceased to exist except in the senses and the memory. And yeah, living with family again is like emotional resistance training. If you can maintain your new identity in your old environment, you're probably on the right path. But yeah, quite a challenge, especially when you've lived for like 10 years by yourself and moving in and just adapting to the whole environment again. So yeah, let's move on. Lesson number, what are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Delegation and buying back your time. And one of the biggest shifts recently has been understanding that at some point, your job stops being doing and starts being deciding. And for me, it's that I can't edit every single clip, design every single thumbnail, write every caption, manage every email, and still be the guy who sits down deeply with guests for 90 plus minutes. I mean, right now I am doing that. But if you look at which of these could I outsource straight away, it's probably editing, right? But just coming to terms of letting go of something has been such a challenging thing for me, because it's my baby at the end of the day. How do I trust someone else to do a better job than me? But that's where Dan Martell's idea hit me, that you have to buy back your time. So if you read his book, Buy Back Your Time, he says that if you try to hold on to something, you'll drop the mission. And John C. Maxwell as well actually says that the key to being a good leader is not doing it all yourself, but ensuring that it gets done through others. And I'm still terrible at this. But I'm still, I'm slowly learning that control freaks don't actually scale. Think of all the big businesses that have done super well. At some point, you see how much work they outsource. So again, something I'm learning every single day, trying to improve on every single day. And yeah, mentally, it's a bit of a how do you let your baby go, right? It's like letting your kid out, go to school for the first time. I don't know what that feels like, obviously, but it feels that way. Or I guess that's what it would feel like going through what I am now. So yeah, bit interesting, but yeah, we'll see how I get on with it. Okay, lesson number 6. I've actually understood now what this podcast is all about, Decoding Wisdom. Initially, I had just started, right? Just go, see where it takes you. But some in the last 2 months, this has just stopped being a show. And I've realized that this podcast is a vehicle to talk about our generation's biggest problems. So obviously you have the wisdom side from successful athletes, successful entrepreneurs, upcoming athletes, entrepreneurs, and just, people who are wiser than me, and which is, I would imagine, everyone. But talking about our generation's biggest problems like identity, loneliness, dating, burnout, comparison, masculinity, femininity, and, this meaning void that we have right now. And we are a generation, that's drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. And I think that's why I've started Decoding Wisdom in the first place. And when you read Alain de Botton's, Consolidations of Philosophy, or in Philosophy, I'm probably butchering that, but Socrates actually says in that book that the unexamined life is not worth living. And then Seneca reminds us that the purpose of philosophy is to teach us how to live. So I don't want this podcast to be just background noise, I want it to be the place where you come when the world feels too loud. And you just want to think clearly again, even if that's for 10 minutes. I want this to be your spot. So moving on to lesson number 7. And this has been a wild, wild ride, which is the art and pain, shall I say, of getting guests. Let's be honest, getting guests has been a humbling experience for me. I used to send long, heartfelt messages, attach my best clips, and you pour everything into that email or DM. And then you would see, they might even just see it, or worse, nothing. To even like having sent short, to the point invitations, and sometimes, people getting back to me with a price tag associated with it. And I've just been gobsmacked when I came across a few of those instances where guests were charging like $5,000 for a 16-minute feature. And I'm like, your episode isn't even going to make me $5K. So what's the point? But, I understand from their point of view as well, because time is money. And I've realized something big though. People don't say yes to your platform. They say yes to your intention. So if they feel like you genuinely care about their story, their wisdom, their humanity, I think that's where the game changes. And, Paulo Coelho, he has a perfect line, which is, when you truly know what you want, the world rearranges itself to let you have it. And there's another pretty cringe quote, but it's very true, by Yogi Bhajan, which is, your vibe attracts your tribe. And I've started thinking of guest outreach as a test of alignment rather than self-worth of myself and the business. So if guests don't say yes to me right now, it doesn't mean that I'm not good enough. It just means that I'm not aligned with them yet. That's all it is, which completely makes sense, right? Moving on to lesson number 8, the leap of faith and why half decisions don't actually work. So when I left my corporate job, right, the scariest part for me wasn't quitting. I think the scariest part in retrospect was admitting to myself that, okay, there is no plan B anymore. This is it. And there is this moment where you stop overthinking, stop planning, stop writing pros and cons and all of that, and you just, jump. And the universe doesn't respond to hard decisions. Oh, hell no, no chance. And there's another cheesy line that I came across from John Burroughs, and he said that leap and the net will appear. And the crazy part is that most of the good things that have happened to me in the last 2 months have only showed up after I took that leap of faith, never before it. So think of it this way. Taking the leap is the lock, and your courage is the key. So you might be presented with multiple locks in your life that need to be unlocked. But the true way you unlock that is through your courage. which is the key, right? So where are we now? Lesson number 9. Lesson number 9, the network lag effect. Here's something I've noticed, and this is pretty wild. As soon as I left my job and fully committed to the podcast, the rooms I got invited to changed. Suddenly, I'm in the UAE, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. I'm talking to people I used to only see on screens. Conversations that felt impossible 6 months ago are just, pretty standard now. And I call this the network lag effect, where the world doesn't rearrange itself around your intention. It rearranges itself around your commitment. So what your commitment is where it goes. And Gortha said it beautifully. He said that once you commit, the world conspires to help you. And when your energy becomes clear, the right people know where to find you. It's a simple thing. You get what you put out, and it's the energy. You feed off other people's energy. So if you're waiting for the right network before you commit, mate, I think you've got it backwards. So commit first, and the network will arrive, on a possible delay, but it will. I promise you that. Just commit though. Go for it. All right. And final lesson number 10, the lonely chapter of reinvention. This is your self-belief versus your mood. Okay. And when I went to watch Chris Williamson recently here in Toronto during his self-discovery tour, this was a huge topic of discussion where, him and Alex Hormozy came up with this terminology, the lonely chapter of reinvention. And it's essentially that when you look at all successful people, every successful person, in order to get to where they are today, has had to go through this lonely chapter of reinvention where, no one really glamorizes because there's no crowd, there's no applause, just you versus you. And when you think of it, especially in my context, when I was working at KPMG in my consulting job, I had to leave the social safety net of the office, right? Think of the banter you have, the politics you have to go through, the coffee runs with folks, and asking people discussing how was your weekend. And all of a sudden now my coworkers are my laptop, my camera, my tripod, and my own thoughts. And that's what the lonely chapter of reinvention is. In order to get to where I want to, I'll have to go through this phase. And it's been tough. It's a struggle because as humans, we crave social behavior. We crave socialism, right? And not having that sometimes, and you being the only one you have to socialize with, it becomes a pretty hard task. And another thing to add on to this is the mood swings, right? Because as in a business, during a day, multiple things can happen at the same time. So 1 hour, I might be thinking, oh, I'm going to build something huge. This is it. And 3 hours later, something shit hits the fan and you go, oh, should I just go back and get a normal job? And that's where this line came from, which is your mood is the weather and your purpose is the climate. Don't confuse the two. And Sam Harris actually once said that the mood you're in is not the person that you are, right? And then when you look at the self-belief part, it is essentially that self-belief isn't a feeling. It's a decision you remake every morning, every day. And yeah, I genuinely think that if you looked at everyone you admired, and at some point they all sat in a room alone and thought, no one gets it yet, but I'm going to keep going anyway. That is the lonely chapter of reinvention. So if you're there right now, you're not behind, you're just early. Okay? So yeah, the last 2 months have been, let's summarize it. The jack of all trades tax, the delusional season, the network lag effect, and right now, I guess I'm in the lonely chapter of reinvention. But there is more coming as well. Going back to the UAE in December to make the most of the winter over there, because a lot of people just go there. So we're trying to get bigger guests for the show, deeper episodes, more conversations about stuff that our generation actually lies awake thinking about. And if you don't think about it, mate, seriously, figure yourself out because you need to. I just want to end with this. If you're listening to this and you feel like your life is stuck between chapters, you don't know quite, you don't quite fit into your old life, but your new life hasn't shown up yet, don't panic because a lot of us Gen Zers are trying to figure this out. So every book you love has a messy middle in it, right? You're just in yours, I would imagine, like I am in mine. So yeah, I hope this episode helped you a little bit, because it did help me just talking through these things with you guys. And, just end it. I appreciate each and every one of you for, supporting me, supporting this podcast. And I've reunited with so many people from my past that I can't appreciate enough. And, discussing ideas, guests, concepts that could really help elevate the show. Yeah, you guys have been amazing. And, for all you new listeners, welcome as well. And I would really, really appreciate if you're watching this on YouTube to subscribe to the channel. It just helps the show grow as much as it can. But also, turn your post notifications on to not miss a single episode of Decoding Wisdom. And if you're listening to it on Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating, because it just really helps with exposure. And also, turn the notifications on, because you don't want to miss another episode of Decoding Wisdom. So with that, appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next week.